Hey guys, I'm Nevin Kay, and I'm the director of the Resist Trump campaign. It's such a pleasure to be here again with you today for another episode of Rise and Resist, the official podcast of the Resist Trump campaign. On this campaign, we coach activists to lead lawful, nonviolent civil resistance of Trump and his enablers. And I'm very pleased to be joined here with my co-host Francesca. Francesca, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing well as I can,
Yeah.
in this state of our democracy.
Yeah. I have been experiencing a little bit of democracy doomerism, so I may be a little bit less hopeful or optimistic than I usually am, and I apologize in advance. I just am going through that at the moment, and I'm probably, I imagine, not alone.
No, that's completely understandable. I was actually really happy for a couple days and I was wondering why, and then I realized I didn't listen to any news for 2 days and I was like, "Oh, that's right. That's right. It was ignorance that was making me so happy to get back on
Yeah.
that."
There was this article that came out, I think yesterday, that really kind of shook me, and I'm still kind of processing it. And it came from a guy in Sweden, this dude named Stefan Lindberg, and I've been aware of him for some time. I guess he runs like a think tank called VDem, and VDem like analyzes nonprofits around, or sorry, democracies around the world, and it's a nonprofit. Anyway, he used the word dictatorship in reference to Trump, which was for me for the first time an expert had not used the word authoritarian, but used like a different word. And that word, like to
Mm,
me, whether it's more serious or not, it strikes me as more serious.
hmm
And he was saying that he's, basically charging towards dictatorship. And that just like really like made me wonder, like, all of us, and again, here's the doomerism, so I apologize. But all of us are like, pushing back and probably assuming that it's going to work. But
hmm
then part of me is like, man, what if we're in for like a really long winter, like of like governmental autocracy, and if so, like what is the meaning of that? That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at right now,
Yeah,
Francesca.
I mean, I think that's totally understandable though, because if you don't sway between there and hope for the future, I mean, you have to have that sway. Because if you don't,
Yeah,
then that hope for the future is just going to feel like, oh, I could get around to it. Like, yeah, I would like to change, but I have time. You need the doomerism to tell you you don't have time. You have to do it now. Because if you don't
yeah,
do it now, then you're going to let it slip and you're going to lose your moment. So
yeah,
it's that sway that gives us that power. It's the doomerism that makes us go, I need actions and I need it now. And then it's the hope that makes it so we don't just like sink into a pile of despair and get paralyzed and don't move. So we
yeah,
got to go back and
yeah.
forth. We gotta swing away between the
I
poles.
gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, I
Hmm
gotcha. I'm gonna try and keep that top of mind today. Yeah. um, anyway, okay. So we typically do like a quick rundown of the news, folks, and so uh, today we are, I guess, going to touch on a few things on the news before we speak to our guests. Um, it looks like the Save America Act is currently going to be debated in Congress. I believe in the Senate, if I'm not mistaken. Have you heard anything about the Save Act, Francesca? And do you have any thoughts
Yes,
about that? Yeah.
I have so many thoughts. I've been perpetually furious since it began. One, I mean, I think it's just so obvious that there's such misogynistic undertones that these are going to clearly infringe on women specifically who have changed their names' rights.
Yeah.
As someone who has recently gotten married but didn't get around to because I was too lazy changing my name, I just think like, wow, my laziness saved me from possibly being disenfranchised if I was even a little more lazy than I was now and didn't want to go and get all of the birth certificate, had to make sure that I got the legal documents that I changed my name. I mean, the amount of hoops. And
Yeah.
if you think about it, I didn't even want to do the hoops to figure out where I had to vote. That Google search of like, where am I going to vote felt like, okay, that's good. That's all I needed to do. And the idea that I'd have to do paperwork and prepare for weeks and then
Yeah.
put money towards all of it, transportation, time out of my day, all because I got married is insane. And never mind the fact that there's not an actual voter fraud problem, which is like my
Right.
biggest, like it's not an issue. It's not an issue. We're creating more problems to solve something that was never a problem.
It's so true. Like I was speaking with an activist friend's husband the other day, and we were talking a little bit about the Save Act, and this person who I like and respect was like, "Yeah, I think that the Save Act makes sense." And I was like, "Okay, so tell me more." And they were like, "I think non-citizens shouldn't vote." And I was like, "Okay." I mean, in my mind, I'm like, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, obviously, but first of all, I don't think non-citizens voting is even like a problem. Like it may happen like in some like rare cases that people vote when they're not a citizen, but I was thinking like isn't that like a felony crime? Like isn't that also like a
Yes.
major deterrent? Like who's like going to get up one day and be like, "Oh, I'm at risk of all of these different things as a non-citizen being in this country. I'm going to go vote and like add to my problems." Like who would do that?
And no one does it. And then also, what's the motivation behind like, oh my God, my need to vote is so overpowering that I need to commit
Yeah.
a felony to do it. But it's also, first of all, the ones that we do have cases of people trying to vote, the majority of the time when they're not legally allowed to is because they were green card holders and they thought that they could, not because they were trying to pull a fast one, but they were like, hey, I've been in the country for a long time, I think I could. And then, of course, you just go, hey, by the way, no, you can't because you have to be a
Yeah.
naturalized citizen. And then they're like, okay. And then that's it. That's the big problem that we're trying to solve. And then
Yeah.
like and there's like a few instances of like people voting on behalf of other people. And by a few, I mean over the course of like 50 years, you're
Yeah.
talking about like a handful of actual pure voter fraud that actually got counted in the votes.
Yeah.
Most of the
Yeah.
time, the voter fraud gets caught anyways, and it's not usually fraud. It's usually mistaken understanding of who can vote and when, and
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, there was an interesting clip yesterday of Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House on the Republican Speaker of the House, being asked like, "Can you name one instance of voter fraud and or voter like someone like voting like when they weren't allowed to?" And he just like changed the subject.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
not a problem.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That so anyway, I hope that doesn't pass. We'll see what happens. I'm not exactly sure
God, I
what
know.
how the sausage is being made on that one, but
I know.
Um, okay, the war in Iran. Some of the headlines that I see are that Israel is hunting down Iranian regime members in their hideouts one by one. This is the Wall Street Journal. Axios says that Trump aides foresee a divide on the Iran endgame because Israel doesn't hate the chaos. Um, and the New York Times says that Netanyahu, the prime minister or president of Israel, I forget, sorry, hopes strikes on Iran will lead to uprising and regime change. What
Yeah.
do we think about that?
I mean, I think that Israel has a specific agenda that is really designated towards their position in the Middle East and what is good for them. That is not considering what would be good for America or the American people. And the American people don't know what's going on, and then the people in charge, the American government, don't know what they're doing. Is what
Yeah,
is what I have gathered is that they don't have an agenda because they don't even know what they want. So basically, I mean, our government doesn't know what it wants. It doesn't know what it's doing. I mean, you have the one problem of I really genuinely do not believe this administration has a particular goal in mind and has any actual tactical plan for getting a certain outcome at a certain period of time. I don't think that exists. You put that with I also think that the people in the top leadership are incompetent, then
yeah,
it's just an absolute mess. And I'll add this. I learned about when they first started negotiating with Iran, previous to the war, only a year ago, when they thought they were going to try to make a deal. It was Jared Kushner and I'm forgetting the name of the other guy in the
Witkoff,
office.
Witkoff,
Yes,
Steve Witkoff.
Witkoff.
Yeah,
And neither of them speak the same
yeah,
language as the Iranian leaders.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Neither of them have any history or of education or even doing business with anything to do with the Iranian sphere. And they don't know a thing. And these were the two people that they got in there. And in fact, one of them, Jared Kushner, had deals going on with both the
yeah,
Israeli and the Saudi government while trying to talk with the Iranians. Are they out of their minds? I mean, one thing you would assume is that it's purposeful because it's so incompetent, but I genuinely think it's actually just that level of incompetence that they just don't
Yeah,
even know.
it's bonkers. Yeah, I've heard. I think I similarly heard like Jared Kushner's private equity firm has received like billions of dollars from, if not, I don't know how much, but from the Saudi government, and that he was making deals during the same time that he
Hmm.
was essentially what looks like renting out our army to do the bidding of other countries' desires. Um,
Hmm.
so that's where we're at in America. Um, but
Oh, there? That's not bad. That's fine. No worries.
um, let's try to shift the conversation a little bit if we could to hopefully some more hopeful topics. I'm really pleased today to welcome a guest from an organization called Together Across America, which is dedicated to building a national network that bridges growing political divisions by mobilizing a broad, diverse movement. TAA, or Together Across America, is a national effort to brand a campaign for change, and it brings people together, neighbor to neighbor, community to community, across party, race, gender, sexual orientation, geography, culture, immigration status, and class. It is my pleasure to introduce the leader of Together Across America, Robin McGehee. Robin, thank you so much for joining us today. Oh, we can't hear you. You're still on mute.
uh, the day and age of you're still on mute.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all so much for having me. I'm one of three co-founders and leads. So Kathy Marino Thomas, who's in New York City, and then Chris Baldwin, that's down in Los Angeles, and I'm in Fresno, California. But we're so grateful that you're highlighting the work of hundreds of organizers across the United States in 37 states, to be exact. And we're hoping to hit all of the states and the surrounding territories. And we've even had people that are with Democrats from abroad that have said we should call it Together Across the World, because, internationally, people are just so threatened and fearful and angry about what's happening here in the United
Hmm.
States.
Hmm.
Amazing. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can talk a little bit more about kind of your story with the organization.
Yeah, perfect. I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, so I'm a Southern girl. I was in student government in high school and worked within that student government to remove the Confederate flag from my local high school. It was by the mentorship from the superintendent. He was the first African American superintendent of Jackson Public Schools. And as a young kid growing up in the South, all I saw the Confederate flag. Oh, that's the flag they have at Ole Miss. I didn't. They weren't teaching us about the history and
Hmm.
what that flag represented. But that mentorship
Yeah,
from that superintendent, having that conversation with him and asking, have you thought about what that flag might represent to other students that don't look like you and don't have your privilege? It was a moment of eye opening, and taught me what happens when we intersectionally look at issues and don't just look at it from our frame.
yeah,
And that has influenced the rest of my work. So now I live in Fresno, California. I moved to California to go to get my master's degree at Fresno State. And I now work as the LGBT liaison to a conservative Republican mayor, because I truly believe that we have to work across aisle to see things from different perspectives and show respect to our neighbors in our community. What a novel thought.
yeah.
Um, and it's that, and I'm a full-time college professor at a local community college.
Amazing. Wow, what an amazing background. You're part of the civil rights movement in your own way, and I
That's
admire what you've done to advance racial justice in this country, starting in high school. That's amazing.
Thank
It's
you.
really
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
And I just love that in this day and age, I feel like so much of our politics is centered around Trump, and there's a before Trump and post Trump. And most people look at a lot of the resistance happening this in this day and age and thinking it's because of Trump that people are getting involved. And for some people, sure, it might be it's a catalyst for their first interactions with getting involved in politics. But for you, it sounds like this has been a current throughout your life, and it's throughout everyone who's been in office that you've had your purposes and you've gone after getting change.
Yes. Well, and so part of that history, I lived in California thinking I was going to move to, people were going to be hugging trees and singing Kumbaya. And, I thought if I just leave Mississippi, I'm going to come to California. It's going to be wonderful. And I am a person of faith, and I believe that it was God's hand saying, you can't run from the work. You have to do it where your boots are planted. And my boots actually got planted into the Mississippi of California, which is the Central Valley of this region. And it's also very conservative. So it's much like Mississippi. Um, but I also am in the soil of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and, lots of civil rights leaders that have been in this Central Valley doing the hard work.
Mm.
For the farm workers movement and the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King marched at Fresno City College. So I say that to say that Prop 8 got put on the ballot here in California. So although I thought I was going to be safe, Prop 8 was something that was discriminating against same-sex couples getting married.
Mm,
The reason I moved from Mississippi to California, I knew from 5 years old that I was a lesbian, and I didn't feel I could safely raise children in the South, and I decided to move. And there's regret in that because like I said, I believe I should have stayed and done the hard work in the state, but I was looking at, I just want safety. I just want to be able to be authentically who I am. And then it was put on the ballot for Prop 8, and our family was discriminated against. I was thrown off the PTA. I was
mm,
told I couldn't speak out or for my family. And that led to doing local organizing, which was an event called Meet in the Middle for Equality. And then that led to an event called the National Equality March in Washington, D.C., with Lady Gaga, Charlize Theron, and lots of other celebrities doing a march on Washington to apply pressure towards Barack Obama. Because at that point, he wasn't willing to really come out in support of same sex marriage. He was more like, it's everybody's own decision to feel what they feel. So we started applying political pressure for full equality for LGBTQ people. Um, and I say, Francesca, I want to say that what you're saying is absolutely correct. We have been in situations where Republicans and Democrats have let us down. This is a failed system in a lot of ways. And what we saw with voters who, number one, didn't get out to vote or that did vote in frustration, that is because the system is rigged against us right now. And it's going to
mm.
take people coming together and saying that they want to do the hard work to push for change. And work to do that for future generations to not live under, what you were talking about, Nevin, which is the dictatorship or the fear of democracy being under threat.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit, if you would, Robin, about Together Across America and how you came to found it and the problem you saw and what it solves.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So, much like most of the country, or I would say the people that were on the progressive side, I was very hopeful with Kamala. I don't feel that handoff happened as well as it should have from the Democratic Party. There's lots of
Yeah.
disappointment in that. But I also got right behind, whatever it took to make sure that we stopped Trump, because we saw, when someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them. Um,
Hmm.
and I will tell you that after we lost the election, I went into a deep depression and despair. And I did not know. I had, activists from across the United States that were writing and saying, what do we do? And mainly because of my past organizing, they were looking for, is there, what can we do? But, going to chain myself to the White House fence. I know that you guys push for lawful, nonviolent civil disobedience, but during the Obama administration, we were doing unlawful nonviolent civil disobedience, chaining ourselves to the White House fence, shutting down Las Vegas Boulevard. But I knew that you couldn't attack this in the way of nonviolent civil disobedience, because that's going to feed into what Trump wants. He wants to move
Mm,
us towards a more militaristic. He wants us to
Hmm.
push us towards more violence, because that's going to be able to control the voting. It's going to be able to
mm,
control the narrative. And so we started brainstorming with organizers from across the United States. And one local organizer in Fresno said, "Hey, do you know that we're coming up on the 40th anniversary of this thing called Hands Across America?" And the 40th anniversary is actually this May, Memorial Day, May 25th, 2026, where people literally held hands from Long Beach all the way to New York City. Um, to bring attention to homelessness and poverty and the mental health crisis that was being ignored under Reagan. And so it was chills. Whenever that person brought it up, I was like, oh my God, that's a great narrative. It's a great mobilizing moment. It's a great way to remind people to go back to, people in civic engagement can really do a cultural shift and influence us to take action. And so we brainstormed, like, should we, do Hands Across America, but in a post-COVID world, people really didn't want to hold hands.
Yeah.
In a ICE environment where people feel threatened in smaller groups, more mass mobilization feels safer. So we said, let's just do a culture campaign where we try to brand a movement, much like what Trump did. I mean, he's successful in branding. That's what MAGA and those red hats, that is a branding campaign. It's, no different than
Yeah.
someone selling perfume or shoes. And so for us, it was like, let's brand together across America, and say, join Team TAA. And, we have these campaign signs that you
Nice.
can get togetheracrossamerica.org. And the idea is that we're not running for a candidate. We're not running for a ballot initiative. We are really just reminding people to, figure out who your friendlies are on your street.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, in your community, what community actions could you do together in a nonpartisan, post-partisan way, where we try to figure, because, I don't know about you guys, but I drive down my street and I clearly know who is MAGA, who is, don't tread on me and don't tread on them, but, they can tread all over my rights, but I can't, talk about my freedoms.
Oh yeah.
And so, but I was like, but there's nothing that tells me as I drive down my street who my friendlies are. And so if ICE, or if we continue to go in this dictator or authoritarianship, I want to be able to drive down my street and know who those people are. So I've actually started a door-to-door campaign in my own neighborhood saying, are you frustrated with the current political system and climate? And if you are, would you put something outside to show that we need to go from polarized to mobilized? And we're asking other people that, if you don't want to go door to door, then do it with your friends and family. The people that feel the frustration and feel that they want to do more than going to a No Kings event the day after. What do I do? Let's start branding a movement and show that there is more of us than there are of them. They just have been really good at branding a minority group that feels very powerful. And I truly believe that we do have the numbers if we could just organize ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say two things came up for me while you were speaking. First, I absolutely love the optics of using a resistance movement that came during Reagan now, because I feel like we're really we're reaping what was sowed under Reagan right now in a lot of ways. So
Yep.
taking that movement that was meant to also point out the failings 40
Yes.
years ago and using it to point out how those failings have just simply built on itself. I
How's
think
trickle down
it's great.
economics working out for you? I mean, trickle down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've been getting any of the trickle down from Elon Musk's 1 trillion that he is working towards. The other thing that I love too is it really struck me as we've been talking to a few other activists in different areas, and the importance of getting your neighbors, the people in your direct vicinity and in your family too, just in your spheres, in your social spheres, getting them engaged and building those ties, how important that's becoming, because it feels like it's the destruction of those ties that really brought us where we are, because
Yep.
people were so isolated and they're in their bubbles. And you're exactly right. I feel like at this moment in time, that the people part of the MAGA movement, they feel safe and proud to come out and say whatever they want. And I'll notice when I'm driving, I'll see bumper stickers, I'll
Yep.
see people with flags, I'll see people with things in their lawn, and I'm afraid to put out a sign that says hope or coexist or anything
Yeah.
that's like even kind of nice, because I'm afraid that they're going to associate that and I'll become a target.
Yep.
And I love the idea of changing that narrative to it being less of a us versus them scary thing and more of a communal,
Yep.
just recognizing that we all are craving that sense that we want change together.
And our hope is that we're asking people. We've joined with Hands Across America 2.0. There's actually a group that is trying to encourage people to do community events on the anniversary of Hands Across America. And so, for example, in Fresno, we're working towards a mutual aid event to give out non-perishables or items to families that are struggling economically right now because of what's going on and what's going to continue to go on based on our current system. And but some people are going to actually hold hands at their local city hall, or they're going to go to a community center and have a community event. So what you're talking about, we're going to need our neighbors in our community even more so as we move through what's going to be happening next. Um,
Mhm.
and I am, hopeful that we're going to have a fair and safe election. But should we not, we need to be able to know who those people are, who our friendlies are, because that's the community that we have to figure out together. What is the next step? What are we going to do to support each other?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Amazing. Yeah, so many things are coming up for me right now. It's really really interesting to have this conversation. So you've told us so far, Robin, kind of your personal journey into activism. You've also told us, what motivated you to start this group, and then you kind of hinted at how far you've come. 37 states, hundreds of organizers. Maybe like, could you just share a little bit about like from when you started it to where it is now, like what that journey's been, what you've learned along the way?
Yeah. So it started with just three people on a call. And then I was actually at a Dave Matthews concert at the Gorge in Washington State. And I
Nice.
watched him speak from the stage about, just his frustration politically and how is this happening in this country. And I just put a post up on Facebook and I said, look, I have this crazy idea that I'd love to talk to people about. If you're interested, please message me. And hundreds of people wrote and said, what is it? I said, I don't have any money. I don't know how to make this happen. And right now it was a birthday fundraiser that I put up, a GoFundMe that sponsored our website. So our website was paid for because I raised $4,000 on the birthday fundraiser. And it's a portal to collect people online and organizations that are willing to partner with us. And ideally, what we are working towards is if we could build the movement and the momentum, is that we really, we feel like the siloedness of our movement right now. Everybody's got their thing that they're doing, which is great. But we are many branches and we need one
Mhm.
tree or one banner that we are actually trying. So for us, we're not trying to build an organization. We are working to build out our website where you can click on your state and it can show you the places that you can get engaged and get involved. Um, and then if we're truly able to build the partnerships, what our true mission and hope is just like we did the Meet in the Middle for equality in California. We want to launch a Meet in the Middle for America in Kansas City, Missouri at the end of the summer. And the way that we look at it is like a Woodstock for democracy or a Farm Aid or a Live Aid for democracy. Where we would invite the Dave Matthews or the Tyler Childridge or the Zach Bryans or the Cardi B,
Mhm.
are the people that are speaking out right now, the
Mhm.
artists that want to stand up for democracy, but there's not that stage. And what we truly believe is that if you could bring people in the middle of the country from urban to rural sites to show our numbers, not just on a street corner, but the voices from the stage, the training during the day, the Democracy Summit, where you talk to people about what their rights are, you train them to be poll workers when they go back to their states. And then you encourage them to get involved civically, because for us, this is not a red or a blue moment, it's a right or wrong moment. And we know that there are red, Republicans like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney that are speaking out, and we know that there are people on the blue side like James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett, that are also speaking out. And what we need to know is that we're on that team that is standing up for an American democracy that is under threat. And if we want to celebrate another 250 years, we have got to stand up and fight for this republic. And fighting for it doesn't look like the violence that they want to make us believe we've got to go towards. It looks like community building, base building. It looks like having a concert and having poets and speakers and music, that really reflect the values of what we should be about.
I really hope this reaches the really discouraged activists, the discouraged people who are paying attention. And exactly as you said, the day after No Kings, sit there and go, well, what do I do now? Because I think some of the biggest plague that we have in the scene of people realizing things are wrong, but not knowing what to do with it, is that we don't have this web that's interconnected in the same way that one would hope. It feels like you enter one activity or you enter one resistance area, and it doesn't really end up getting attached to anything else. And then you're just kind of floating there in the sea. It's a bunch of people just bobbing there thinking, how are we going to take on this wave? And hearing you talk about wanting to build that interconnected web so we all can rely on each other and that we can all build to be a bigger part of the whole system and on our own with each other, with this resistance. That makes me feel a lot of hope and excitement over what we can do, simply from, as you stated, just from starting with our neighbors and then working all the way up to being so formidable that that big wave in the ocean is going to have to listen.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and for us, it is a need also to look at it intersectionally, climate, racial justice, economic justice, queer justice. I mean, there's so many different, not only organizationally, but platform issues where we are on the same page around needing to stand up together as a movement that is under attack. They clearly have a team on the other side, and they know who their enemies are, and it is the people that are different from them. And what I would say is that once we band together and know our power and our strength of solidarity and connectedness, there's no stopping that. But I will say that we all know that we're coming up on No Kings 3, and I'm deeply grateful for Indivisible. We have worked to try to make a connection to Ezra and Leah, who every week have a podcast called What's the Plan. People are looking for a strategy. They want a more than just a defensive message, which No Kings is. I mean, you're going to get the largest protest ever in in our history as a country. And that is something to be applauded and to celebrate. But we also have to capitalize on what's our message of hope. What's our message that is not a defense, but an offense as well. And that offense looks like saying to people the very next day that if you don't feel safe enough to put the sign up, like you just said, or go door to door, then can you share this with 20 friends and have them post it? I remember during the Prop 8 days, people would change their profile pic, and it would all be the same profile pic all across, online. Imagine if we were doing that in a way where it shows solidarity, and that kid that's sitting at home, that their family is facing deportation, or they're trans and they don't see a light in their own world because of what they're being discriminated against. If they see at least just an online presence, what that does internally for us. That's what we believe in.
And even on the other side of those people who are in their Fox News bubble that think that they're the majority and that they're being, what Trump is doing is giving what the real Americans want, and there's so many of them. They need to have that bubble popped too, that they can look around and see that, like, oh no, this is not what the majority of Americans actually
And
want.
so if you go to togetheracrossamerica.org, get your stickers, because for me, that's my dream, is to drive around and see more stickers that show that we're together in this than more MAGA stickers and more pro-Trump stickers. And, and
Mhm.
I mean, as much as I don't, can I cuss on here? I don't know, but
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
you can.
yeah, so as
Go right
much as
ahead.
I feel the sentiment of fuck ICE and fuck Trump, the reality is that's feeding right into their hand. I don't want to be like them. I want to
Mhm.
show a movement that is on the offense, that's building something that has a beam of light at it that is going to be stronger than any darkness that they're trying to
Mhm.
throw our way. And that is what they want. They want, if you go on to our Facebook, Together Across America, there are those, Republican MAGA Trumpism people going on there, and they'll, anything I put up, they'll go on there and, try to attack. And I don't
Mhm.
try to block it all. I respond. I'm
Yeah.
thoughtful. I'm kind. I give facts. And the moment that you start to respond in that way, they back away because they realize, oh my goodness, they're going to come at me.
Yeah.
And that's sadly where we are, that we have been sucker punched as a country. And we have to remind ourselves that that takes a moment to, collect your thoughts and your energy, but that doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you just go away and cower, or they're going to come at you worse, because then
Mhm.
you learn that the bully can get away with whatever they want. And what we're trying to say is, let's remind ourselves of our own power. And that old saying that action is the antidote to despair, that Joan Baez said, is so true.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I love that we're on that note right now, because I was going to ask you, how I can break out of my doomerism, and it sounds like if action is the antidote to despair, I need to figure out some new ways to act, or to
Yeah.
lean into that a little bit more. Um, so thank you so much, Robin, for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure
Thank
speaking
you
with
guys for
you
having
about Together Across America. Do you have any final announcements or calls to action you would like to make to our audience, Robin?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you go to togetheracrossamerica.org and just give us your email address, you'll get weekly updates. We do have Zoom calls that we'd love to have people join. And if you have an organization that wants to partner, we're not asking for any money. All we're asking for is partnership and collaboration. That is what matters most to us. So just reach out, and you can message me at robin@togetheracrossamerica.org, or go right on our website.
Amazing.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
so much, Robin. Thanks for
Thank you,
joining us today.
Robin.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Wonderful. That was a really fun conversation, Francesca. What did you what are you feeling right now from that?
Yeah, I'm really feeling excited. I love Robin's background. I really
Yeah.
do think it's important to recognize that where we are now isn't some out of the blue, like leaning towards the right that we've never seen before. And just knowing that this came from a act of somewhat rebellion during the Reagan years, and then
Yeah.
all of her work throughout her life, that even getting Obama's attention to get gay marriage actionable and all of the rest, it really reminds you of like, okay, there have always been fires that we've been trying to contain, and this one feels like it might burn down the whole house.
Yeah.
But we have tools and we know what to do, and it gave me a lot of hope and excitement that we can really do something about these fires and do something about the despair that you are
Yeah.
feeling and that I'm feeling and we all feel.
Yeah. I was getting this vision of doing like a Hands Across Austin, the city where I'm based, to kind of bring our community together, and I wonder if that could be in the future of like these kind of like local get-togethers, doing essentially the model that Robin's has described to us, but bringing like local communities together in a similar way. That's just really cool to do something like that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we're kind of at the end of our call, guys. I guess you heard from Robin from Together Across America, which you can find more about them on togetheracrossamerica.org. Want to also refer you all to our website, resisttrump.us. And please do check out a few things on that site. We run Zoom calls throughout the week, and we welcome folks at any of our kind of mini campaigns. We run Boycott MAGA on Fridays at noon Eastern. Stop the Lies Fox on Tuesdays at noon Eastern. And we also run Ice Out on Thursdays at noon Eastern. And then finally, we have a book club called Resistance Readers that we do on Sundays at 5 Eastern. It's kind of weird saying Eastern because I'm currently in Austin, which is Central, but sorry, I hope you guys can figure that out. And then this month, we're doing a special session of Tirades on Tyrants, which Francesca is hosting on Fridays at,
Come check it out.
5
It is
Central?
6 Eastern, 5
6 Eastern.
Central.
Thank you.
Considering moving those times, so stay tuned in case you can't make it this few weeks. Maybe it will come back at a time more beneficial for you. But yes, check us out. We would love to see you at any of those gatherings. I'm always there at Ice Out, and would love to see some new faces as we're about to see Mark Wayne Mullen. Let's see what he has to bring and all the things that we have to do in the future to stop him. So join
Yeah,
us.
lots of interesting, situations ahead of us. But good luck to all you, and don't doom her out. Remember that action is the antidote to despair. As I will keep close to my heart this week. It is a pleasure sitting with you, Francesca, and such a pleasure to be speaking to all you guys in the audience. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Great time as always. Ciao.
Ciao.